Welcome to Big Hearted Indy, where we empower men in Indianapolis to forge deep connections and impactful lives through authentic friendships and service. Join us as we explore personal growth, community leadership, and the transformative power of living out our faith in action. This podcast is produced by Citizen 7 and hosted by Greg Enas, Don Palmer, and I am Chris Spangle. And our guest host today is Ryan Davis, and our guests are Toph Day and Matt Tyner. So, as always, we kick it over to Greg. Why don't you introduce Ryan first and tell us a little bit about our guest host, and then we'll get into Matt and Toph and have them give a little introduction.
Sure. Well, thanks, Chris, and welcome to these dear friends. Man, I can't wait to rock this next hour. Briefly, with Ryan Davis, we decided to fire Don Palmer today and get someone, better class act, because we got two class friends.
This is low and dirty because he's on the Zoom watching.
He really know how to hurt a guy.
I didn't tell Greg to say that.
No,
to be here.
He says you really know how to hurt a guy, but it's 75 degrees and sunny where he is.
That's right. So, we decided to forego the wrestler. Don was a boiler wrestler for a bit. We got Ryan Davis, who knows how to hoop. He's still trying to challenge me to hoop it up with him on the court. One day we're going to do that. But Ryan's become a dear friend over the past 3+ years. He's inspired me and all of Citizen 7. Citizen 7 has actually been a big formative part of Ryan's connection here in the city. And we're going to bring you back on to tell more of that story later on. But it's great to have Ryan co-hosting this with me. And Ryan got to know Matt and Toph, too, over the past few years. So there's some neat connections here that we'll flesh out later on today.
Yeah, so thanks for the intro, and so excited to be a part of the conversation today. Citizen 7 has been a huge piece of my networking and personal growth, and we'll be excited to share that story at some point as well.
Very good. And so let's talk to Matt and Toph. Okay. Who are Matt and Toph?
Yeah, okay. Let's quick intro.
If you were
we'll go in reverse alphabetical order. Tyner first.
All right.
Yeah.
Again, hey, thank you so much for having us. Humbled to be here. Loving what you guys are doing with C7. Background on me, I was born and raised in Charlotte, North Carolina, moved here when I was 7. I went to St. Matthew, Chittard, and found myself down at IU. Thought I was going to walk on and play baseball. Made it about 3 months. Coaching change in August, right before I reported to camp. My dad used to say you can do, there's 3 S's in college. You can pick 2, social, scholastic, and sport. And so when sports didn't work out, I knew, I was going to major in something. Social and yeah, exactly. Major in social and scholastic. So that's what I did.
There's no better place than IU to major in that.
That's right. That's right. And so I spent 5 years down there. I did the 3-2 MBA program. I got fascinated by what you could do in the trading world. I thought I was going to end up at Wall Street. Mm-hmm. Things didn't work out. I was in grad school during 2008, 2009, if you remember the time back then. Yeah. Anybody in Wall Street, securitization was really the robbers back then, and audit and economic consulting were the cops of that time. So I found myself in public accounting, a life that wasn't for me, but got a really, really strong foundation about the language of business, spending time with Dobie, O'Connor, and Zaleski and Carmel for almost 2 years, and had a career mentor at the time, Karen Casaro, who was the old CMO of Simon.
Okay.
And she was making some angel investments into companies, some of which spawned out of ExactTarget at that time. And she pressed me really hard to explore a life in entrepreneurship, the finance and accounting side of startups, and ended up joining a spawn of ExactTarget in 2011 as employee number 8, really the first back office hire for them, and spent the next 9 years working on that business through ebbs and flows, fits and starts, all different types of rounds, different management teams, different board dynamics along the way, learned a ton, and ultimately sold that business during COVID. Spent about 2 years with the acquiring entity, planes, trains, and automobiles, opening up offices all over the world. Incredible experience, but my first son was on the way. And my wife that summer of 22, was going, hey, just a reminder, you live in Indy, right? And it just so happened that there was an opportunity where I got a chance to meet with my dear friend here and work alongside Toph at Elevate Ventures. And so we'll get into that a little bit later, but I'll kick it over to Toph.
That's great. Toph, thanks.
So background, I grew up German Baptist. I would say Amish people with wheels. So horse and buggy to church on Sundays. Grew up on a particle board floor, no TV, but we were expected to go to college. And so I like to say I picked up a paintbrush, and that's how I painted my way through college. Painted houses, had 14 employees in college, and then went on to be blessed with having 8 companies and 7 verticals over about 27 years. And then come July 18th, it'll be 3 years at Elevate Ventures, and it's just been a really incredible ride. Along the way, I figured out that if you lead with working hard and kind of thinking ahead and delivering solutions, not creating drama, that you tend to get opportunities. And I certainly wouldn't be here where I am today without relationships with like what we have in this room, and like literally, if you track my life, there are specific people at inflection points that gave me a chance, and so I'm just excited to be here with you guys today.
Let's take just a second and define Elevate Ventures. What is that? You're wearing Rally sweatshirts. You matched for the podcast today, which was very sweet.
Yes.
What is Elevate Ventures? What is Rally?
So Elevate Ventures, we're the number one most active venture capital firm in the Great Lakes region, early stage venture capital firm in the Great Lakes region, top 20 in the country in the U.S. We invest in cross sectors, so software, hard tech, life science, product, and multi-stage, so pre-seed, seed, Series A. We are in a process now of going to market to launch Indiana's first ever growth equity fund, so entry point at Series B. So we're really fired up about that. And then Rally, we launched Rally a couple years. We like to say that's where innovation convenes, and it is all about bringing disparate stakeholders together cross sector. So when you get like with AI, the proliferation of AI, modernized tools, what are you building today? Is it a software company, a hard tech company, sports tech, healthcare? It's 2, 3, 4 verticals in one. Mm-hmm. And so we found that when you get a bunch of people in a room who don't do the same thing, that's where magic happens. That's kind of the quick high level.
We're going to talk about opportunities because I know by the end of this month, prices go up after the end
right.
of this month. So
every month, prices go up.
People are getting tickets. But before I turn over to Ryan, I just want to talk about now individual story. But where did you guys first meet? And were there sparks, no sparks? Did you know something was going to happen? How did that mature?
Lots of sparks. Maybe I'll go first, and then you recount.
Yeah.
So I'll take us back to 2014. TechPoint, Mike Langelier was running TechPoint at the time, and he had an idea. And his idea was that if you could figure out a way to get college students in mass together, then you could compete on campus recruiting with the likes of the Googles and the Apples and the Facebooks, by basically bringing all the startups and scale-ups together to then pull students into their business for an internship. What ultimately became Extern, a fascinating program, now places, I think, somewhere near 150 students per summer into startups and scale-ups in the Indiana ecosystem. But that was kind of the first introduction that I got to Toph. Toph was very active in early days TechPoint, and I think he'll go into a little bit of that story, I hope. But got to know him there and was immediately fascinated. It was one of those, I'm 25, 26 years old. Yeah. I'm like, I want to hang out with that guy. Yeah. And so, TechPoint, there was another group introduced called ITIA, which is the lobbying community. So we fought for things like SaaS sales tax back in the day. So I was on the finance committee of that. And I just found myself gravitating towards things that he was involved in with the hopes that I could grab a drink with him or grab a coffee with him and start to intentionally network in that way. And I think, honestly, that's how we got to know each other initially. Just kind of sticking my neck out there saying, hey, can I get an hour? What ultimately morphed into him then starting to call me. He was in MarTech, started Demand Jump. I was in MarTech in Indianapolis. And we had just gotten through our Series C at the time. He was on his Series A, I think. Yep. Series A. And now we're sharing investor lists. We're sharing feedback. We're sharing board stories.
It's for all those investors out there. Entrepreneurs talk. We talk to each other, right, about who are the good guys and who are the bad guys.
And so we got a chance to really be accountable to asks that we had of each other in that time. And you learn a lot about friends or colleagues or new folks that you're networking with, how they respond in those situations. And that really became a relationship over time. He'll tell you that he tried to recruit me to come to Demand Jump a couple of times. The timing didn't work out. We had similar investors on our cap table, same city, same vertical. So that was tough. But when he called me in the summer of 22, it was different and I could feel it. And I was so humbled that he would think of me for the opportunity.
That's beautiful. So you got this young dude. Maybe you think this dude's a hanger-on. See you later. But what attracted you to say no, Matt? Let's do it, man.
It's very clear in my mind from memory what attracted me to Matt. The very first time I met him. So the very first time I met Matt, he said something to me that was akin to what he's really passionate about is the intersection of finance and data, and finance and operations. And when you really focus on bringing those two things together, how they can inform every action throughout a company. And I thought very much the same way. I'd never had someone tell me that proactively. And so it was love at first sight from a business standpoint. Yeah. It was love at first sight at that moment. I'm like, wow, this is interesting. I've never heard someone say that proactively. And so I was immediately very curious and interested about how his brain worked and what he was up to.
That is so cool.
Yeah, quick question on that piece. There was no chat GPT or anything like that. So did you plant that, or did you just organically? I mean, that's kind of how you work.
So employee number 8, 24 years old, MarTech, back when technology benchmarks weren't a thing. We were still understanding the science of recurring revenue business models. I had a really strong background in understanding accounting. I had a passion for finance. But really where the rubber meets the road is in the operational understanding of each function within a software company. And so I set out to get a deeper understanding of how the assumptions we were making in a pro forma were impacted by the performance of disciplines within a company. What is your go-to-market function doing? How can you scientifically understand what levers there are to pull? Same with product and engineering. Even in back office, right? How efficient are you with your dollars? And it wasn't until you started to connect your understanding of data that lived within a CRM to your understanding of data that lived within QuickBooks or Intact, data that lived within your pro forma in Jira for product and engineering, that you started to get this full picture. And it's when you have access to visibility and understanding of the full picture that you can really start to manage a business well. I used to call it operational harmony. At Elevate, we call it operational excellence. But it's this moment where you can feel it. Everything's happening on purpose because you can see it and you trust it with confidence. Now, it takes a ton of work, a ton of dirty work. Every detail matters. Every step in a process has to be mapped and well understood. Humans have a huge role in this. But when you get there, it's this deep breath aha moment, magic, which is like you can go on spring break and not worry because the business is just working. And that's been a passion of mine for as long as I can remember.
Is it hard to be friends in business together, or what's the benefit, and what's maybe something you got to be mindful of and guardrails you got to put in place?
So I think a lot of people think that we were like best friends, beer drinking buddies before we started working together. Yeah. We had a professional relationship for that's a number of years, right?
Probably
so
6 years.
I talk to Matt every 3 months or 4. I don't even know how. 2 or 3 times a year. And now when we were going through some capital raising things, we would talk every month or two. But we had a professional and a very differential, I think mutually differential relationship from a professional standpoint. So we weren't like, we're better friends now than we were before we worked together. And he is right. I did try to recruit him twice, and he told me no. And I went hard. The third time I told him I'm not taking no for an answer, and I got him some espresso martinis.
Yeah, I know the answer that you want from me. You get to this point in your career where you get an opportunity to choose what you want to do and who you want to do it with. And I've just been so blessed to have relationships with those who I work with and work for, where they are some of the best friends that I have. And I think it's important because like the only constant in business is change, and change is so crazy hard. It is. It's the hardest thing that you have to work through. I'd much rather be in the trenches working through that change with a friend than anything else. And so I think it does increase your responsibility in a relationship where you're friendly, because you want to maintain that friendship long after your days at Elevate, right? And so when I say I'm going to do something, it's like double. I have to do it because I said so at work,
Right.
but he's also my friend.
Yeah.
And what would you do for your friend? I am the most accountable to my friends. And so I think it's extremely important. You're lucky when you find it. It's not always the case. But I wouldn't have it any other way.
Greg, I think you bring up friends and family when you
Right.
start businesses, and for those relationships when you are already friends or best friends and start a company, or when you start a company with family members, I think one thing that's really important to think about is roles and responsibilities. And somebody kind of has to be ultimately in charge, quote unquote. It doesn't mean that people don't operate autonomously. But I had a previous business with a friend. When we started the business, we were friends. And actually, I've had multiple businesses with people who were friends before we started the business. And at the outset of each of those businesses, we sometimes even put in the operating agreement, this person has full decision-making authority over A and B, and this one over C and D. Or someone's the CEO, right? The idea of co-CEOs is a really hard concept, especially in a startup business. And so if the roles and responsibilities are set clearly up front, even maybe in the operating agreement, then things will tend to go a lot better than mutual decision-making.
That's great.
Well, go ahead.
I was just going to add. So we chatted last week of July. I didn't start until middle of September. We spent hours face-to-face up at Holiday Farms, the old clubhouse, while they were building the new monstrosity that exists today. We spent hours talking because it was so important that we thought about the world the same way, the opportunity in front of us at Elevate the same way, give us each confidence, going back to roles and responsibilities, that we were going to be able to go execute the way we wanted to. And all that work gets done up front. It's not really an interview.
Right.
It's a meeting of the minds. And if you get there before you start, it takes a lot of pressure off what became a friendship in the moment, because you're already aligned psychologically of what needs to be done and how you're going to go do it.
Yeah, there were a lot of questions, right? Around, and Matt showed up with a list of 6 questions. He's like, "All right, I've got some questions for you."
Yeah.
And they were all philosophical questions. How do you think about this? How do you think about that? What would you do in this situation? And really powerful.
Dug deep. You want to see a copy of that, maybe, Chris?
Does that daily rhythm help or hurt the friendship? Because I think about like a friendship with a spouse is one thing because you were in it day in, day out. You know everything about each other, but sometimes you don't take the time to just hang out.
I want to hang out with Matt more, but his wife won't let us.
Well, that's my question is like seeing each other every day, working on this shared project. Does that help the friendship or does that modify the friendship for you, maybe between other people that you might have, that you're so in constant communication, but it may not be necessarily the same as if you're just going to lunch once a month to hang out?
That's a really good question. It has certainly made our friendship stronger. When you really invest in each other, you start to understand the dynamics of how people think and operate. And so I can sense frustration long before another colleague of ours, right? And because I know what he's after, even if he didn't have the time to articulate it as well as he would have liked, right? You're moving a lot. CEOs got a ton on their plate. And so in that way, it's really helpful. We often connect at night, right? Just to cover off on the day and set ourselves up for the next day. But we do carve out time to just think and be, and not necessarily think or be about Elevate or Rally or anything else we have going on. Because in those moments, that's where our magic happens. When we're not even really focused on a deliverable or a problem that we need to solve, we just have some space. We don't do it as often as we should, admittedly, but we do. I'd say once a quarter minimum. Most recently, probably my birthday. Just headed out to a bar to sit
Yeah.
and chat. And it's super important, I think.
You don't take your friendship for granted. That's what I'm hearing.
No.
In fact,
No.
you have to be intentional.
We
even
invest
more.
in it.
That's right.
For sure.
Right.
That's beautiful.
Yep.
Yep. Ryan?
You talked a little bit about kind of philosophy and the 6 questions that you had, and I love your comment about exact target. I didn't know that about you. I actually learned that today. One of my really good friends was Doc Irons. So I would always ask him, how do you determine what to invest in? I'd be very curious, y'all's philosophy on how do you choose where you spend your dollars at investing?
So
It's a great and very hard question.
yeah, yes. I mean, there's definitely subjectivity involved in objectivity. So the first thing I would say is our mandate at Elevate Ventures is venture development and venture capital. So what do I mean by that? A typical venture capital firm will invest in about 1 out of 100 pitches. If you look at Elevate all time, we're tracking at about 8 investments out of every 100 pitches. So our mandate is not at the mothership, we call it at Elevate Ventures, is not pure returns based. We are charged with catalyzing the entrepreneurship, the innovation driven entrepreneurship ecosystem throughout the state of Indiana, and then by the way, try not to lose any money. And so I'm happy to report we're not. We are actually driving a return as well. And so that's even a more difficult thread, I think. In strict VC, you are investing in that company that you think is going to deliver a 10x return minimum.
You got a double bottom line here. Or more. Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And so it is a fine thread that we try to work towards, but at a high level, if anybody follows this kind of stuff on LinkedIn or does Googling, you'll see this out there. But at the pre-seed stage, when I talk to students and young folks, and if they want to be an entrepreneur, I see you are already auditioning for your investors right now. And what do I mean by that? If you're a jerk, there's another word for it. Like people talk. I show my son texts today. Still, I show him texts that I get when people say, "Hey, I think you went to college with this person. I think they were in your same major. They graduated the same year. Did you know them? Are they a good person?" Right? Like building relationships, offering up solutions, not creating drama. Those start for sure in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And that stuff is going to attract you one way or another. So at that pre-seed level, we're looking at the person, the jockey, we like to call it. Right. So who's the jockey? Even more important than the idea. And so that's at the pre-seed stage. At the seed stage, then you start to get into MVP. Do they have an MVP? Are they building something that is truly solving a pain, or is it a solution in search of pain? And then the next stage in Series A is true product market fit. Do you have a repeatable, sales model, sales motion? Those are kind of the biggest ones I would point out.
Yeah. The other thing I would add in our model, we're also charged with catalyzing the investor community.
Okay.
And so we use our dollars to syndicate rounds as we invest in these companies. So part of our responsibility is to help the entrepreneur prepare for the world that Toph and I know all too well, which is what it feels like when you're going and pitching to a VC that only invests in 1 out of 100 companies.
Mm-hmm.
You've really got to have your stuff together,
right,
to prepare for those moments.
Yeah.
And so we use our dollars in that way to then help lean into those businesses and prepare for the shark infested bloody water that is VC. And so in that way, we might invest in a company that other VCs won't initially, because we're going to pour into them and prepare them and get them ready for those same VCs to take a look downstream.
Man, sign me up. What huge rock are you facing together that you can't face this challenge coming up unless you two guys are knit together? Heart, soul, and mind. Anything you want to just share with us in that regard?
There's a couple rocks. I'll start. As an operator for 12, 13 years, this community does a really good job, I think, of propping up businesses at the early stage. So we take all of the risk. Our state, our entrepreneur and innovation ecosystem does a really awesome job at outsourcing or giving away all the risk-adjusted returns. In true wealth creation, wealth for the community is created with our ability to enter these companies later because they're de-risked.
Right.
And if we can just play alongside the existing players that exist in Boston, New York, San Fran, Chicago, we're get a chance to recycle that wealth at home. And if you think what we're doing today from an early stage perspective is good, okay, just imagine what you can do. I like to tell this story about Exact Target when they sold. A large majority, to the tune of somewhere between 80 and 90% of that wealth, was put back into the Boston ecosystem, all because Battery Ventures led the rounds in the late stages, right? And so we took all the early stage risk in the late 90s and early 2000s, getting Exact Target to an investable place. And a majority of that wealth, to Battery and others left with it when they sold. So it's really important to get this growth fund off the ground.
Okay.
We're shooting for $200 million growth fund in the state of Indiana, first ever.
Okay.
It's a massive rock, and we got to be as aligned as ever to pull that off for the community because it is so very important to give the confidence to entrepreneurs that they can scale their business here and that they have the capital necessary to do it without having to go to the coast to find it.
Right on. Okay, Ryan, you taking notes on that?
I most certainly am. Time frame for that $200 million?
Well, since this is being recorded and is going to be publicly available, we feel very confident we'll be launching we'll have first close and launching in early 26. We do have an earlier goal and that we are trying to hit for first close.
Yeah.
But I think we'll definitely be in market in early 26.
That's awesome.
I want to mention something what Matt just said. So I had an investment banking firm. It was one of those 8 companies back in the day. And I first started talking about the need for a growth equity fund here in Indiana 15 years ago. And so for everyone out there, entrepreneurs or people who are trying to do something new, trying to better the state or your community, it's easy to read headlines and think, well, gosh, that was just easy. That's not fair, right? This has been 15 years of work, right? And then even at Elevate, folks would start talking about that with various folks at the state and IDC, et cetera, going back to 2017. And so this is really hard stuff when you're trying to pull different constituents together. Then the one other thing I love, Matt, your example, and I'd say the other rock is we get a lot of stones thrown at us. I'm gonna get vulnerable for a second,
please.
right?
Yeah.
But we get a lot of stones thrown at us. Yeah. There are a lot of naysayers out there, and I don't know if it's folks that you may be against change or whatever it might be. But it's really critical that we are in lockstep, and not just the two of us, but in fact the entire team.
Right.
And so everybody on the team takes what we do. We have been able to recruit over the last couple of years just really incredible talent, and people who are taking reduction in what they would get paid in the private sector, because like the impact that we can have on future generations, on families, on our children, our next generation, is such a special thing. And it's almost like someone had a plan to put us all here. Actually, I think somebody did have a plan to
That's
put us
right.
here.
We're going to talk about that.
And it is just really special, and we take that really seriously. That we've been given this rock to carry, so I know it's a little bit of a softer item, but I would just ask folks out there who might be listening, like let's all ask ourselves: are we a naysayer?
Yeah.
And maybe we shouldn't naysay if we don't have all the facts, or if we haven't sat down and talked to people, one-on-one with a belief that we have that may not be correct.
Right. And just as an example of these stones, how can we come alongside you and know about what these stones are that are being chucked at you?
Yes. So I'll just take Rally as an example.
Okay.
I was in a group setting giving a little pep rally on Rally. And someone in the crowd made a comment that, well, that's all great, but it's not fair. A bunch of people are making a bunch of money off a rally. Well, nobody's making and I said, well, who? I said, who's that? I said, who's that? Who's making a bunch of money off a rally? And like, well, you are. So I make $0 off a rally. Yeah. In fact, rallies lost money in the first 2 years, and we think we'll be able to get to break even here, maybe even this year.
Okay.
But if rally made $1 million, quote unquote, it gets pushed the next year, right? It gets reinvested into rally. Rally is here for our children, for our next generation. It's here to put Indiana, on the global stage once and for all. And what I believe is our rightful place. I think we're the innovation capital of the world. The world just doesn't know it yet. And but we do this stuff on nights and weekends. Now I'm single, and so I probably have a little bit more freedom, to work some insane hours. And I've always worked hard and always worked a lot, but I've never worked more than I do now. Yeah. But I'm kind of addicted to it. I love it. It doesn't feel like work. Yeah. And so that's an example of like we're trying to do some really awesome things for the community, and you always put a big, bold, bright face on, but man, sometimes it wears on you a little bit when people are just death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah. I just saw a thread on LinkedIn 2 days ago. A great colleague of mine, and I knew what he was trying to accomplish in the thread. But it was something akin to, how do we get back to what the tech industry felt like here locally 10, 15 years ago? Mm-hmm. You have to do. That's how you get back. Right. So I would just inspire everyone listening today, as we think about the future economy for the state of Indiana, right? We make stuff really well. We have our foothold in pharma. We have our foothold in other life science industries, Warsaw, Indiana, for example. Those are not going away. Mm-hmm. Think of what technology can do for those industries to make them more powerful than they've ever been before. And if your hesitancy to get involved is because you're looking back to what it used to feel like 10 or 15 years ago, you are the problem. Yeah. Like, just pick yourself up by the bootstraps and make something happen. Come to rally. Do participate in C7. Be available to the younger generation that's cutting their teeth in tech for the first time. It's so critically important as these companies come and go, and the real talented operators maybe don't want to sign up for another tour of duty in a startup, that they pour back into it. And a lot of people do. But we just need more of that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I love the comment about impact in community. And one of the questions in the back of my mind was going to be kind of tied to success and what continues to drive you. But I would love to just understand the root of wanting to give back to the community and have such an impact. And either one of you guys could take it, or both. I'd love to know more about that.
Yeah, I don't prescribe to a bunch of personality tests, but I do say this much because I think it's helpful. I'm actually an Enneagram 2. And so for someone who is, steeped in finance and accounting.
And what's an Enneagram 2 for?
It's called a helper. It's called a helper. And so my driving trait, the thing that wakes me up in the morning, is whether or not I can help others. That can come in the form of colleagues, family, community, businesses. In the case of Elevate Ventures, it is very odd to love numbers the way that I love numbers and also have an Enneagram 2.
Yeah. I knew there was something odd about
what a fascinating opportunity here at Elevate to get to do both. Yeah. Right? Yeah. We are on the cutting edge of private financings. And everything that we do, every step that we take is for the greater good. And I couldn't ask for a better opportunity because of that.
Wow. Chill moment right there. That's awesome, man. Yeah, absolutely awesome.
I've got some questions over here from our friends on Zoom. So if you're watching this later on YouTube or listening on an audio podcast, then if you join us on the last Monday at noon in heartbeat.chat, which you can find the link at citizen7indy.com, you can join the Zoom and ask questions live of our guests. And if you're on Zoom, you can listen later when we post these on YouTube. So Andre asks, with the goal of making Indiana the innovation capital of the world, how does Elevate Venture view blockchain and crypto in that vision?
That's a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question. So, I think the short story is I personally, Matt and I actually talk about this a lot. And one of my biggest worries right now is, are we as a community in Indiana, is our talent pool pushing the envelope enough on trying to think of new startups and solving pain points, leveraging these latest and greatest technologies, blockchain or AI, modernized tools, et cetera? They're coming out of the woodwork now. And I'm not sure if we are. And so I'm going to go back to one of Matt's rocks, this growth equity component. There are many companies that have many entrepreneurs who've gone elsewhere and started their companies because they didn't think they could scale here. Because we have some pre-seed, seed, and Series A dollars, but we don't have that critical scale capital, that growth capital, Series B. And so I believe that that's people go to other markets to get involved in those type of industries because they believe that's the only place they can be successful. And I don't believe that's true, but I think we've had some gaps in our ecosystem to make those folks feel comfortable doing those things here. So I think it's critically important, but I am worried that our ecosystem may not be spooling up enough companies in those industries, as opposed to other markets. Now, I think we're starting to see some green shoots of that changing. Good. But it's something I think about a lot when I lay in bed at night, of how can we talk about finding entrepreneurs from dorm room to boardroom. So no doubt at Rose Hallman, at Purdue, at Indiana Wesleyan, IU, shouldn't list schools out because there's now I got to list 150
what about
out.
Goshen?
But like they've got to be thinking about this stuff and working on projects, and we need to be meeting these kids that are working on those projects and giving them some seed capital, which there's another shift coming too in VC, we believe, and that is this idea of series, pre-seed, seed A, B, C, D, E. That may be changing drastically, where there may be very limited B's and C's and D's in the future, because you can scale so much more efficiently. But I think it's super critical, and I would love to see if anybody's listening out there that has an idea, or if you have friends that have ideas in those industries. If we haven't met yet, we want to meet you.
That's great. AI and crypto from the get-go.
Yep.
We can't be waiting there, and that may shift the way the financial capital stacks are built over time.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the future of AI in the next 4 years is going to be such a game changer.
Well, and right now, today, by the time we leave here, there's going to be 5 more tools.
Yeah.
In this conversation right now. So if you go back, and this is how we kicked off Rally last year, the agricultural revolution was centuries. Literally lasted for centuries. Mm-hmm. The Industrial Revolution lasted for decades. The digital revolution, evolved over years. This AI revolution, it's evolving every single day.
Yeah, I saw a video of robots side flipping. I don't know why we're teaching them to kick, but we shouldn't do that. But anyways,
got some iRobot vibes going on.
It's crazy. My Instagram feed is Terminator. So Don asks a great question, the great Don Palmer, and I think it really piggybacks off of that discussion. What advice would you give to a 30-year white-collar professional now on how to maximize their career? So 40s, 50s age range, especially in light of all the challenges and changes that are about to happen.
Yep.
And Ryan,
you go first?
Greg, love to hear from you too.
Yeah, take a step.
Well, so I guess it depends if they want to have their own business, or if they want to progress, up the corporate ladder. I believe that the quote unquote risk of entrepreneurship, historically, decades, for the last 100 years, being an entrepreneur wasn't really cool for a long time, right? Why would you take that risk? You're right. You must be a failure. You can't do anything else. So you got to go be a quote unquote entrepreneur. I actually think that maybe one of the riskiest jobs you can have today is in corporate America. Mm-hmm. And with the rapid escalation of productivity, I think we'll be waking up and seeing many people lose their jobs overnight. If you don't embrace AI, it will absolutely disrupt you.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest things I think about here is all these traditional businesses out there. If I was in a corporate role and maybe I wasn't very happy and I'm trying to figure out how to do something with my life to get more meaning, et cetera, is think about entrepreneurship also through the lens of acquiring a business. And I think we don't think about that a lot. And we have all these baby boomers. They're going to they don't have succession planning. And these are great businesses. The $1, $2, $3, $5, $10 million businesses. Yeah. Some much more than that. But start diving in now. Start networking, and you can find a great business to buy with not a lot of cash. Actually, you can go get some bank financing, and you're in business and in control of your own destiny.
Love that.
It's a great hook. Goes back. We got to retain talent here too.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. This is a way, and how are we going to guard? Ring fence that to make sure that the Rose Holmans, the others, they stay here, either acquiring businesses or going at another path. But
I would also just say, like, in raising your intelligence level, like mentoring. What I've heard in this podcast over the months is mentoring younger people gives you access to younger energy ideas, right? Like, that's Greg, I think, does such a great job of mentoring and being involved in a lot of different cross sectors of ages, you name it, right? And that just gives him such a great perspective, and Don too, and you see it throughout this podcast. Yep.
Yeah, I was just going to layer in, and that makes me nervous that corporate jobs are going.
Right.
As a white-collar corporate guy right now. But, I mean, I think the one thing that is very clear that is upon us is change is rapid, right?
Yeah.
And, me personally, as I think about my career and what that looks like, I love your comment about helping people, right? So I think in anything, you've got to be serious about continually educating yourself, and then ultimately, by this point, you would think in your career that you have had some level of success, and now what's next? And what I've learned through Citizen 7 is success is good, but significance and eventually surrender are better.
Are you talking about the book?
I most certainly am.
I love that book.
What book?
It was Finishing Well by Bob Buford, and that's actually when Toph and I first met.
Yep.
Tell me more about how you feel that book maybe inspired you or changed you, or you were already going that way.
It set me back in my seat. It made me question, where am I? Right? And I don't feel successful. As I sit here right now, I still don't feel successful. And maybe that means I've defined success wrong, right? What is success?
Or right.
Or it just so it set me back in my seat to ask myself, where am I in life? And as I thought about, my son and how I am as a father, am I teaching him the right things? Am I preparing him for the world properly? With what I do for a living right now with Elevate Ventures, how does that impact the community, impact the state? Or the initiatives that we're putting forth, are those the right things? Are those going to be significant? Right? When do I surrender? Like it made me question everything.
If I could boldly state this, your past success, right? So in the book, it talked a lot about significance, and I've got on my board at work, success, significance, and this year I actually put surrender. Success, me-based, surrender, others-based. Surrender the will of God. And to me, the work that you guys are doing, you're in the impact phase, right? You're in the significance, and it also talks about significance, taking what you've learned to help others. Well, today, that's what I hear, right? You guys have had success, and now you're talking about creating wealth in the community and impact. Like, that's significant. So congratulations, my brother. You're on from success into significance.
Awesome.
What's been that journey like to surrender and faith in particular? We're bucking against it. We're going to do it my way or the highway. Forget this other stuff. Tell us a little bit about your journey of faith or lack thereof.
Yeah. I came up through Catholic schools, and I credit a lot of who I am today for that experience. I think it did a really good job of molding the person that I am today. You get into entrepreneurship in startups and scale-ups, and life comes at you fast. And for me, I think you can quickly lose space to prioritize faith. And it wasn't until recently, within the last 3 years, where I knew that I couldn't continue at that pace alone, that it just wasn't sustainable. And I needed to find a community, a faith-based community, that spoke to me a little bit more directly than the Catholic Church was at the time. Mm-hmm. And I found that in Traders Point. And ironically enough, it's the same church that Toph goes to. We just didn't know it.
Wow.
It's another colleague of ours goes there as well.
Yes.
And he's a colleague now, but before that, he was the one that is responsible for welcoming me to the Traders Point community at Midtown. And in finding that, it was that extra oomph to keep going that I needed, that I don't think I could have gotten any other way. You can work out, you can diet, you can love your wife and family, you can do all those things.
Right.
But when you're operating at this pace and you're trying to sustain it, to impact others, right, significantly, I just don't think you can do that without faith.
Well, Matt, that's powerful.
So, I referenced being German Baptist and the buggy and all that kind of fun stuff. So my dad was a deacon in the church growing up, and I have vague memories of him kind of being up there and preaching and things, and there was no music in that church, all that kind of fun stuff. Everybody has a backstory. Everybody has their own set of experiences that are the most important to them, because that's your experience.
Right.
My experiences were living in an extremely abusive household, in a household where the father would probably go to jail today. And so, in full disclosure, I didn't walk with God for a number of years, for many years, because it was kind of like, well, how would God let that happen to to kids?
Yeah.
Like I just couldn't reconcile that, and so I chose to focus on the good things I learned, which were thinking ahead and work ethic. And I just kind of put that stuff in the background, the abuse part, and I kind of thought about it probably in my 30s, and to Matt's point, your life's come at you so fast that you just again ignore it, right, and focus on the here and now, kind of the selfish piece of just me, and how am I going to improve my circumstances. And then several years ago, it just started hitting me like a ton of bricks, and I thought back to God spared my life twice. And like literally spared my life twice. Once when I was about 5 or 6 years old, I was hit by a car, and the impact blew my shoes off, split them down the middle, blew my shoes off.
I learned something new today.
Wow.
There it is.
Wow. Check. That's great.
And I always, in the back of my mind, I always felt like my life was spared for something. I wasn't sure what it was.
Wow.
And I would learn that someday. I gotta be careful because I get a little emotional. But
Go for it,
But
man.
I almost literally died 2 years ago on spring break. Almost drowned. I was caught in a riptide. And can somebody else talk now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was caught in a riptide and almost went under. And I think by the grace of God, he was kept here to continue doing what it is that we're doing every day.
And I think I've figured out now. I was trying to find my son on the beach to see his face one last time, and in the last effort, I didn't realize I was. By the way, if anybody's listening to this, if you're ever in water, and I've known in a case of riptide that you swim parallel to shore. I've known that since I was swim lessons at 10 years old, less than that. I think when a lot of people might drown in riptides because it doesn't register that you're in a riptide. Because it's more like, I can brute force this thing. I know how to swim, and you're swimming against the current, and you're exhausted like that.
Yes.
And so I had 3 times tried to swim against the current, not thinking I was in a riptide. And so literally, I'm away from shore. I don't know, at least 50 yards, and knowing that what the next action I took would be life or death. And so I was trying to just stay above the surface long enough to figure out what I was going to do. So I was trying to figure out, can I place my body in a way that my son can find me? Or do I try one more time? And knowing if I tried one more time, I would die if it didn't work.
Yeah.
And at that time, my buddy, I made kind of eye contact with him on the beach, and I saw him make a motion with his arm, motioning down the beach.
Yeah. Go parallel.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, go parallel. I'm in a riptide.
Yeah.
And so I waited a few more minutes trying to just gather the strength if I was going to actually try it or not. And so long story short, I'm here. I think I do know what I'm supposed to do next. But we'll see how that all shakes out. But so God has definitely become more of a part of my life in the last several years. And, last weekend, for example, Pastor Brockett at Traders Point, he breaks down messages into real life things. But this weekend, about a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago, something he said that really hit me hard was man your battleship, a concept. This weekend, something that hit me really hard was throw down the rocks, pick up grace, and let the sins go.
There you go.
And there's so much turmoil and chaos right now in society. We need to throw down those rocks, throw down the stones.
Right.
We need to pick up grace.
Yeah.
And we need to let go of our sins.
Yeah.
And it's never been more critical than now. And it really saddens me that there's a lot of components of leadership that it's not healthy.
No.
Hey, Toph, I'm going to take a risk here, but I want to know, for a lot of us, we struggle with purpose. And for several of us, we've been given second and third and fourth chances at life. Some maybe never, but you and I have been given a couple different shots at life.
Yep.
When you say, I know, I think I know, can you go deeper with that? I mean, I personally am struggling with that myself, so I'm interested to hear that.
I think I'm supposed to serve people in a different way at some point in the future, and in that capacity it'd be a very vulnerable capacity, because we see what happens today when people put themselves in the political world. But somebody's got to. We need people to step up, in no matter what political party or what in all political parties. People used to get along a lot better. In fact, in Indiana, 94% of our legislation is passed bipartisan. But we need people to step up and not be afraid of the naysayers and taking the body blows and the body shots. And I'm not saying that's tomorrow, but I think at some point in the next decade or so, I'm supposed to do something in that front.
Yeah, that's good. I just pick up that theme. We don't forgive because we don't know how much we've been forgiven. When you said put it down,
yes,
how Jesus has forgiven us. There's
Yes.
no shame. We can't love because we don't know how much he's loved us.
Yeah.
And that's been my journey, just even at 69 now. Man, I've rejected your love, but who has love to give unless they've received that love? That's the power of the gospel. And that's why I see coming alive in you guys here.
One of the moments, this is 2 or 3 years ago, that this hit me really hard. And it was through C7, down at Lake Lemon. And Ryan, that's where we first met.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was a really powerful moment in not only my life, but maybe more importantly, my spiritual life. And just being immersed in an environment with 40
guys
who come from all different walks of life, have all different kinds of experiences. And Greg, you and Don are brilliant when you have events where you'll throw questions on the table, which automatically creates like this.
That's right.
This bond, because Ryan will tell a story, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can relate to that because of ABC. Like, it just changes the entire human interaction.
Thank you.
It's special.
Thank you.
It's funny you mentioned grace, and in the love, right, of God. And Matt, I'm thinking about you, 2.5-year-old son, new baby here, and just really quickly, I just started reading the Bible this year and had a moment where my family went to Tahoe. We're coming down the hill, and I had just started reading the Bible. I'm in maybe, I don't know, day 7 of it. And we get down the hill, my son gets to the airport, he passes out. And at that moment, I'm like, man, what's going on? God, I'm reading the Bible. Like, this is the thing.
I'm doing good.
For learning more about you. And he ended up being okay. He was dehydrated. But even at that moment, what God said to me was, I had an option to save my son. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Like, I would have given anything for my kid to be okay right then. Mm-hmm. But I learned so much about the grace of God in that moment. And, just thankful for this group, for the energy that, this brotherhood has created.
Yep. That's what keeps me here. I'm a California kid. My family's saying, why aren't you out in the West Coast? Toph Day, Matt Tyner, Ryan Davis, Chris Spangle. I mean, there's something special going on here. We got to close up.
We got to wrap up.
I just want to get a final thought from you guys before we close. Any final thought you want to share with the group here?
No, again, thank you so much for having us. I think this is so important, especially when I think about the group that has become C7, bunch of movers and shakers. The importance of relying on faith to just check your priorities, I think is been what I found most useful in re-exploring my faith journey, to just constantly check in and say, am I doing the right amount of the things that I should be doing for the people that I should be doing them for? And I credit moments like this to as those check-ins. So thank you very much for doing this. I think it's so incredibly important.
Thanks, Matt. Toph, any closing thought?
I think I would reiterate, let's all drop the stones, pick up grace, and let go of the sins, and try to keep deference top of mind when we have those interactions that sometimes are hard news. Let's try to show deference to each other. And when we receive, Matt tells me things I don't like to hear all the time, but I know it's come from a place of love.
That's right.
And I appreciate the transparency, the honesty, and so if more people could have those kinds of interactions, I think we'll all be in a better place.
Right on. And Ryan, thanks so much for co-hosting today. Any closing thoughts from?
No, just an honor to be here with you all. Don, thanks for letting me pinch it. So lucky to have guys like you to call friends, and Matt, getting to know you more today. Really have enjoyed that, and look forward to getting to know you better as well.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we had so many great questions in the chat too. I wish we had another hour because we could go through all of it. Mike, Andre, Alex, all saying what a great conversation this was. So thank you.
If they show up at Raleigh, they can ask.
They can ask in person. That's right.
You want to give a plug?
We'll have a C7 Power Hour at Raleigh.
Yeah.
There you go.
We'll make it be.
Register before the end of the month because the price goes up.
That's right.
After April 1st.
This is true. RallyInnovation.com, September 24th and 25th.
And we will be announcing the next keynote as prices go up that we're really excited about. So stay tuned.
And check out Toph's podcast, Innovator Evaporate.
Yeah, thank you.
That's
yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
All right.
It's the
Thanks so
best.
much for joining us here on the Citizen 7 Indie Podcast, Big Hearted Indie. We thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this conversation, if you felt like it was of value, which we all certainly do, then please share it. That's the best way to spread the word. And we thank you so much for joining us here on Big Hearted Indie.